Imagine a league built by the people, for the people. A league dedicated to the economic development of your city. So the question becomes, how good are the 32 teams that play in the minor football league? Well, there's only one way to find out. You have to experience the MFL.
Welcome to another edition of Inside the MFL. I'm your host, Richard Myles Sr., CEO, Chairman, and founder of the Minor Football League. I want to welcome y'all to today's show. We have a very exciting show today. I was on a hiatus the other day. Had some things I had to take care of, but fortunately, it's all taken care of now on the personal matter. But I just want to welcome y'all to Inside the MFL. As you know, a lot of things been going on this week, this past week, and it's not that pandemic in terms of that COVID-19. It's what we're doing. We're dealing with America as a whole, because we got to. I mean, I made a statement before. We have to, get to the point that sometimes you get sick and tired of being sick and tired. And right now, I just think that the way that people of color being treated is not it's not a good thing. And I'm at the age now where I've seen two sides of it. In terms of when I was young, I seen the march with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I was young. I seen what we went through with the Malcolm X. A lot of things we went through when I was young, back in the late 60s. I seen those things. So I can tell when something is the same, whether we want to admit it. And sometimes I have to say, we got to stop turning the cheek all the time. The question was put to me by a lot of people, is this really America? We all talk about, in America is the home of the free and the brave. And you ask people, is this the United States? One of the greatest countries in the world. But you have to ask yourself sometime, is this the home of the Constitution or the home of the Constitution? I mean, that's the question that need to be asked, because we keep going through the same thing time and time again. So, we have to really open our eyes up and see that a lot of things is not right. And we keep saying that, these things need to be changed. They need to be changed. And the more you say it, these things do not get changed. So I'm really a little upset in terms of the way things happen when you see a man murdered, in front of your eyes. And you have to say to yourself, wow, is this really going on? And then right after, again, you see young ladies killed in our home. I mean, what is, we have to reevaluate things in terms of what's going on here. I mean, we beyond, everybody, talking about racism. Come on, man. I mean, you have to be Ray Charles not to see what's going on. So I want to get into it. I'm going to bring my guests on. I have my guests here today. I want to bring my guests on, my Chief Strategy Officer, Melvin Forbes. Mr. Forbes, how you doing today, sir?
Very well, sir. How are you? Can you see me?
Oh,
okay?
I'm doing good, sir. You see, I'm a little heated up today. And I know that I shouldn't be, but then again, when are we going to say enough is enough?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you have a right not only to be heated, but to be concerned, and also concerned enough to be called to do what we've never done before, and have America take a real good look in the picture of itself. And I think that's what you're seeing, because the one thing, unfortunately, that happened was the tragic of a man being murdered. But historically, Mr. Myles, that's been happening to the African American community forever. It just was not readily available for the viewing audience. And that has been the issue. What happened during Martin Luther King Day, once America saw those young people being water hosed and beat by police and dogs sit on them for no other reason than they're marching for their civil rights, America took a look at itself and said, this can't be who the people we are. So consequently, we made some steps. But freedom is a constant struggle, okay? You just can't say you're free now and don't continue to fight for freedom. It's not something that happens one day and then the next day is gone. You have to continue to fight for freedom. So the African Americans have always, I had to laugh when you said the home of the brave, the land of the free and the home of the brave. Well, clearly it has been the home of the brave for the African American soldier, because in every conflict, World War I, World War II, the Vietnam, the Korean conflict, we were the brave. But if America is ever going to be free, then it must face the truth. Because my mother used to always say, the truth will set you free. So I think America has made progress. The reason it has made progress is because you and I are able to conversate over elements that in past years we would not be able to. However, we still are not there yet. But I'm very optimistic. I'm very hopeful that you're going to see changes like we've never seen before this time, Mr. Myles, because I'm seeing the conscience of America being aroused and wakened by young people, Caucasian young white men and women are saying, is this really what you all go through? I was actually asked the other day by a very good Caucasian friend of mine. He said, Melvin, have you ever been stopped? I said, the question is, how many times I've been stopped?
Yeah.
And he laughed because he said, why would anyone stop you? I said, because they can. So we have to do what we see Congress, the Black Caucus is doing, call for a reformation of how the police department sees and does things. Because right now, the police officer is the judge, the jury, and the executioner. And back during the Western days, that was called a lynching, wasn't it, bro?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, to bring up I also want to bring Jamie Dukes on, former analyst for the NFL and played in the National Football League. And we want to get some insight on how you doing there, Mr. Dukes? Put your Dukes up.
Doing fantastic. How are you, Dr. Forbes? How are you, sir?
I'm fine.
Because that looks like what we're going to have to do out here now. We're going to have to put our Dukes up.
That's correct. That's correct.
As you know, we're talking about this subject before we get into what we're doing with the MFL, because y'all doing some great things, especially with the when I get
National
excited,
Baptist
that's why y'all don't let me talk.
That's called a conscious interrupt.
Yeah, because when I get mad,
Melvin Forbes, conscious interrupt.
That's why y'all don't let me talk to. But when I get to talk, I get mad. I can't. I lose train of thought. But Jamie, I mean, you have to see what's going on. How does that affect you as being an African American man with a son? And like you, Mr. Ford, we heard from Mr. Ford, but with a son, it has to make you kind of fearful for your son as well as yourself.
Well, the thing about it, and I've just always been kind of a, let's find the positive in what could happen. And yes, first of all, yes, I do get fearful. My son sometimes jogs in the neighborhood and I feel the neighborhood say, but the question of not knowing is not knowing. And so I don't want to sell short that fact of not knowing. And I've been blessed that I'm not living in a neighborhood, which I have to keep in mind too, that might be more conducive to law enforcement having a different approach from that perspective. So I have to be cognizant of, in truth, for the last 30 some odd years, on a day-to-day basis, I haven't experienced those things, even though I experienced much of that as a child, and same thing, I say for all of us at this point where we are in our lives. But as I look at the circumstance, what jumps out to me, and I say this, I believe that, for example, when we start talking about the conversation and the argument, the best thing that has happened to me, and from my perspective, has to do with, Drew Brees, history will show us, did more for the conversation maybe than anyone else, because what happened, he went to something that President Trump was pushing towards, as opposed to, as everyone else was saying, it's the flag has never been the issue.
There
The
you
flag
go.
was never, ever, ever the issue. It was about no human being should ever be killed because of the color of their skin, period. And so he was drugged down. You know how the media goes. He was drugged down a tired argument because people want to hear about it. But at the end of the day, what I appreciated about the circumstance had to do with one simple thing. When Malcolm Jenkins, and I think the rest of the world got Drew, you're missing it. This is not about the flag.
Absolutely. I was
when that,
offended because I had
no,
two kids fought in the war myself.
but if you don't know, you don't know.
Right.
You got to say, if you don't know, it could,
There's
because
that tunnel
when you
vision.
have somebody leading a narrative, and that's what the president really kind of did for his own purposes, because that argument and conversation and making that shift is what diverted, and to me is what basically sucked the life out of what Colin was trying to do, because they got it pushed to the flag. And then now we start talking about the flag, when no, that's not what he was saying. The saying was just very simply on the merits of common sense. And I think that's where many of our Caucasian brothers and sisters got the message this time, was it realized that, no, nobody should die just because of what color their skin is. And that was the key. Because if it had got back to this flag thing, I still think nothing necessarily, we wouldn't be where we are, because people were sidetracked by an irrelevant argument and an irrelevant conversation. And now we're able to crystallize it and bring it back to the one simple issue. As Dr. Forbes said, this is easy as pie to understand. It is as simple as no one on this earth in any country, because that's the reason, in my opinion, the world got engaged, because there are Kurds, or there are Italian people, there are other people who are being discriminated in their countries for a different reason because of the color of their skin. And so that's where I have, and again, I accept his apology, just like I accept Roger Goodell's recognition. For me, okay, fine.
Okay. I'm glad
Does he
you
have
brought
to say
that up.
Colin Kaepernick? He don't have to say Colin Kaepernick for me personally to understand that the light bulb finally went on, and they realized they were off message and off thought, because they got all pushed to the flag, and everybody panicked because we were talking about the flag. And now you start talking about the flag, now it's a totally different conversation.
Do you think Goodell is really what you say, he's sincere in what he said, as far as, I want to apologize to the African American players for not understanding or not taking it serious? I'm a little confused by what he said, because
don't be confused. Let me clarify. And this is what I'm trying to say. Roger Goodell, got pushed down the wrong hole in the conversation, so I never got a chance to hear what these young men were saying had to do with the color of their skin and how they were treated, as opposed to Roger's down the path of the flag. And now we start talking about the flag and patriotism. That's just a whole different animal. This time, you think about it. We've had conversations, and you say, well, that's a little off topic. The first time through, it was off topic. This flag thing was off topic of what Colin was saying. And it was off, but this time we got it on topic, and he, along with, because think about it, it's the same epiphany. Roger was no different than all of those other white people and Asian and other folks who are on the streets right now. They finally got the epiphany Oh, hell, they weren't talking about the flag. They were talking about because of the color of my skin, I shouldn't be killed. And that makes common sense to me.
But
So
you know, do he get a pass, Mr. Forbes?
it's not, yeah,
Do he
well,
get a pass?
it's not about giving a pass. It's about anyone who, in my, again, I'm a man of faith. If someone is willing to admit, and this is why I'm a Roger Goodell fan, and I know him, and so my perspective may be a little different than others on the outside who don't know him or the league. Like I said, I tell people I know the NFL better than anybody on the planet because I worked 10 years with him as a player, and I worked 10 years as an employee. And so I've got a chance to meet with him. I've got a chance on numerous times to have a conversation with him and other people, Troy Vincent, and you've had conversations with Troy. And again, to me, it's not about the past. There'd have to be a pass given if he did not recognize what he's admitted to. But think about it. It takes a real to admit in front of the world, hey, I was wrong. I now see the errors of my ways. And so that's why anybody else I'd ask you, just like you do your children or anybody else, if they're apologizing, and now the question becomes to your point now, and this is where with what we're doing, which we'll talk about with the National Baptist Convention and all these other things, the NFL just set aside $250 million. What we're doing in the faith community, in our faith-based and business initiative, is we are taking action, real, tangible action. And so to that point, if the league and other folks who've said, hey, this is what we want to do and we believe this, that, if they're unwilling to join in with somebody in a group that has a real solution, a tangible solution, a solution that everybody, once they see it, and Dr. Forbes is getting it at the front end, they go, really? Oh, wow. That makes perfect sense. So from that point, if they're not willing to put their quote unquote money where their mouth is, then okay, that'd be something different. But and we're going to give the league and all the other sports leagues and all of corporate America and the United States government the opportunity to, yeah, this is a good idea. Well, we don't need you to co-sign our idea. We need you to take action. We've done the work. We put together the coalition of all these businesses that have said, you know what, enough is enough. And so to that end, we're asking you to take action. And your lack of taking action, our campaign is I'm in. You can log on to NBC, www.NBC, I'm in. And if you're not in, we're going to hold you accountable for why are you not in? That's what this is about. And so, again, to me, it's not about a pass. It is about, I'm going to take you at your word. Now, once I'm taking you at your word, if your action proved to be something else, okay, we're going to talk about that. And then at that point, if the actions aren't there to match what the words were, then there's no pass.
Mr. Forbes.
Yes, sir. To Jamie's point, it's just not Goodell.
And just so you know, we all busy people, so these phones ring all day because we're working it. That could be a congressman or a senator or a governor or somebody calling Dr. Forbes.
I know.
So I told Dr. Forbes that's going to happen about 3 or 4 more times because his phone rings left and right.
That's because y'all busy guys. Y'all busy guys. Go ahead, Mr. Forbes.
So it's not about Goodell getting a pass. It's America. See, America finally has come to the light because America is the same institution that said we were 3/5 of a man. We didn't have the right to vote. Now, my father used to say, when you are eating fish and you come to a bone in the fish, you just throw out the bone and keep eating the fish. So everything that is wrong with America can be fixed by everything that's right with America. And so let me tell you what I mean by that. America's greatest asset has always been African Americans, because in the South, when we were enslaved, we were the asset for their agriculture, all their farms and free labor. In the North, we were the labor pool for their gins and mills and all that. So think about having an asset for 400 years that you didn't have to pay for. and being able to continue to make that money. So here we are. Here we are. It's not Goodell. It's NASCAR. It's the NBA. It's the baseball. It's the entertainment world. It is the Army. Everyone is now saying, how could we have missed you all having to go through what I consider? I told someone every African American really needs therapy because we should be suffering from PTSD based on what we've had to go through. Because when we left home, we had to be one person to just get in and do our job and be accepted for how we did that job. Then when we went back home, we had to deal with a whole nother different lifestyle. So we've always been, Mr. Myles, an adaptable people because we've had something that is embedded with us that Martin Luther King talked about. African Americans, he said, are the moral conscience of America. We have a conscience. And if it was ever about revenge versus equity, we would have been in another war a long time ago. But because we've always been about parity and equality versus revenge. Now, think about it. We took care of their children. We fed them by cooking and cleaning their homes. So we had plenty of time to be revengeful. That's just not the nature and the DNA of African Americans. I'm not saying all of us, because, bad and good is colorless. You got as many bad black folk. One of the worst beatings I ever got was from a black guy. About 5 of them. I actually took 5 of them Dr. Dukes to beat me. Back then I could handle it back then. But my point being is,
that's what it took, Doc. I understand. That's what it took.
Yeah, it took 5.
You're 5'5". You're 5 over 1 of a man.
so my point being, Mr. Myles, is it's not how you line up, it's how you wind up. And we're standing on the shoulders of all of those who have gone on before us. So just like they left us in a better position, it's our turn to leave our children and grandchildren in a better position. And I truly believe, as a result of the death, let me make it clear. The murder. That was a murder.
That was a murder.
Well,
That was a murder. You're going to see changes like you've never seen before.
Yes.
I have one of my guests call in, and they ask, America need to answer the question of, is this the United States of America or the United Snakes of America? Because each time we seem to be snake bitten by America, she had never kept her promise, and she will not keep it again. So
I disagree with that a little bit, and let me say it this way. I'm a, and I don't know if it's the athlete in me or not. I don't know. I've always been, I'm a bet on myself kind of a person. I have never allowed, I am proud of who I am. I am proud of my culture, but I've never let my color or wherever I came from define who Jamie Dukes was. Okay. And so what I've learned in the process, I still think there's just as much wrong on both sides. And what I mean by that, and again, I'm going to talk about the economic part of this, because one of our biggest issues has been that we haven't had the motivation. And that's why I'm so in awe and honored, I always tell Dr. Forbes, I serve as the president of Dr. Forbes, because it takes vision. We got to own some stuff. When you own some stuff, money is power too. The other thing I'll say on the other side of, when I hear, I bristle at America hasn't changed and this, that, and the other, because what I do know is that there were 36 million plus white people who voted for Barack Obama. 10 years ago, you couldn't have got 6 million white people to vote for Barack Obama. We've come a long way. What's happened is we have an administration, and unfortunately, the administration has taken that opportunity to flame something Yeah, there's a core that's always there. But again, 36 million white people voting for President Obama is 36 million white people. I don't care what anybody says. Dr. Ford's been around a long time. I can't think of any other point in time in history where that could have happened 12 years ago. Do we have to improve? Absolutely. But I want to go back to where I was with the vision and what we're looking to do. This is about being able to own something and create. We always end up selling it off or giving it away for 12
We
cents,
need to
$12
control
million.
the narrative.
Yeah. And so what we have to do, once we get ourselves in position to where we are, as Dr. Forbes says, we are creating industries for jobs. What we will do this time is we will create industries. I guarantee you, when the economic forecast changes, your power changes. You know, and that to me is when you start having these conversations. Of course, systematic racism is there. I'm not downing any of that. I'm not belittling any of that. But what I'm saying is, again, I'm a bet on me kind of a person. And what I'm looking to do, and what we're looking to do, is find more people, white, black, purple, green, but particularly people like us, who are looking to create something that's going to last. Why do we have to sell something to Johnson and Johnson or GM or who said we had to do that? You know, my problem more, you know, again, goes back to, we have to learn to work together. You know, case in point, we did, you know, one of the videos on the site, LeBron, Magic, and Michael Jordan, all billionaires, or billionaires to be in the making. It's just a matter of time. Show me what deal they're doing together. I can show you AOL merging with Time Warner, people having synergies and seeing this is how you have to build, is collaboratively. You know, what we're talking about is we have to do this together. And that includes us working together. Those who have and have been successful, let's work with other companies, pool resources, pool ideas, pool energy, pool thought. And we own something. To me, it starts with owning and producing. Then we change our economic future.
Mr. Forbes, young man said, this is for you. Oh, okay. Why, you know, what is the disconnect with people, black people that on a different, on a different level, as opposed to black people working together? Why is it such that disconnect, where that mistrust between African Americans working together, the ones that have the money, or I'm not gonna say that. So he says so-called gatekeepers for those African Americans with money compared to other African Americans trying to do things. And they say, Jamie, good question, good answer. But he said it always seemed to be a problem. Black people will not work together. Why is that?
Well, let me, well, first of all, the price of freedom is performance. The more freedom you want, just perform. The reason that Tiger Woods had the kind of freedom he got, because he performed with his golf clubs. Michael Jordan with the basketball. Muhammad Ali with his gloves. So the price of freedom is performance. Now, the reason that it is difficult for us to work together is because we had been brainwashed, hoodwinked, and really disfranchised by those who owned us. And still we rise. So what we have to do now is bring everybody to a plateau of understanding. Once you grew up here in Washington, D.C., I grew up in North Carolina. There's a Southern culture that's different from a Northern culture. But once I come to that plateau of understanding, that's just your culture and how you do things, then we can then take it from the plateau of understanding and rise to a peak of unification. So a lot of it is education, information, and hopefully that will create the motivation for us to work together. However, you and I both know that I'm a realist. So I, like Dr. Dukes, will look at not what I don't have, but what I have. I'm not mad at anyone for taking care of what they can take care of. Now, let's face it, we've not had the same amount of equity
Sure.
and parity as white privilege is real. Everybody, a friend of mine just found out this week what white privilege was. He said he used to hear it, but he never understood it until he saw just this week Senator Tim Scott from South Carolina talking about, as a senator, he gets stopped several times going into the Capitol. He's African-American senator. And the guy, his counterpart, walks right in front of him, and they both got on the same pen. So a lot of it is timing. I think what you're seeing more now than ever before, because of the social network, the information is getting out to more masses of people than it ever got out before. So now people can't hide anymore, Mr. Myles. It's right in their face 24 hours a day, because anybody that has a phone with a camera, they creating production live, you on candid camera. So I think what has to happen is more of what you see happening, and that is people coming together around a cause. Unfortunately, George Floyd I won't say lost his life, but his life was taken. But it's going to permeate, I think, for a greater good, greater cause, because you just don't see a protest here domestically. You see them protesting internationally, and that's incredible.
So, I mean, Mr. I'm not keep reading this stuff now, y'all. I'm not the narrator. Y'all keep sending stuff. What do we do? What is the MFL? What is the MFL doing now with this? Although we had this pandemic, going on, what is the MFL doing, and how are we doing in terms of getting people to understand the MFL is the laboratory of change, and why don't we call on other former players and current players? Why don't they? Why they're not interested in?
They didn't know. It's funny. Let me finish that for you. It's just this.
Tell people stop sending stuff in, man.
No, they keep sending it in there. Just keep sending it in there. Just keep asking. Okay. It's very simple. It's the same thing. It's education. They have to be educated about what we are doing and what we're doing after 25 years. And I applaud you for, it's funny. There's a lot of leagues that have come and gone, and we always laugh and joke. And every time one pops up, we say, that ain't going to work, because the business models are bad.
Right.
But I think, but the value pop in the rebirth, if you would, of the MFL as I see it, has to do simply with the relationships that we've established with the African Union, and the fact that, in the 2021 season, because there's no season this year, because our season starts now, and we're not doing that.
Right.
We're just not doing that. So we're done, if you would, or in preparation for the 2021 season, because our football season starts in June, and it's June 12th.
Right.
But to that point, what we're doing is this, and think about it. This is what I love about our model. I was just telling buddy mine Scott here about the fact that what separates the MFL from the other leagues is, as we know, 75% of the National Football League is what?
African Americans.
Relationship that we have established through the African Union, allows for us, and the vision of what we're doing there is still critically important, because we are a developmental league. We're not trying to compete, and you've said this many times, we're not trying to compete with the National Football League. What we're trying to do is fortify the National Football League and expand the brand. Not that we're getting paid for it, but expand football to the world. The NFL allowed you to pay and own a league. The world doesn't know, but they will. It's allowed and afforded me to do the things. It's afforded Dr. Forbes the opportunity to work for 3 presidents, Democrat and Republican, and 4 governors. His experiences, where he's come from, his education, all those things have allowed him to do those things. So my point is that the MFL, we're going to have a season 2021.
Absolutely.
We've got
Everybody's
African
excited.
nations lined up. We got 16 teams in the United States. We got 16 teams that we're going to have in Africa. Nigeria, Sierra Leone, Ghana. We'll
Egypt.
probably end up having 3 teams in Nigeria, only because there's 200 million people in the country. And the model is very simple. We're going to have, I always tell people, okay, first group we're going after and expose them to the game are the Olympic athletes. I know Warren Sapp can teach a 6'4", 322-pound shot putter from Nigeria who runs a 4.8 40 how to drag his knuckles and get to the quarterback. And it ain't going to take Sapp long to do that. We have all of the support from, players, on up, D'Angelo Hall's going to be greatly involved. All these guys, Brett Dion, all of these guys, they see it, they get it. As it pertains to the guys today, they will have an opportunity to see how they can actually purchase their own franchise. So you want to talk about doing some things and changing some things around? And our business model is strong. That's the difference. When it's all said and done, this is all going to come down to the league's business model and the realities of how our model is significantly different. You can't pay somebody $60,000 and it's not an NFL team per season. Those numbers don't work. I can barely afford the Giants tickets. I can barely afford the Falcon tickets. You know what I'm saying? So to me, that's just flawed to think that you can pay a guy $30,000, $45,000, $50,000 when the whole gate for the whole night might be $50,000, $70,000 for some of these games. Because the National Football League is a National Football League. And there's no competing with the National Football League. But that being said, our strategy has to do with the development of players. It has to do with, as you mentioned, the laboratory change. So from the medical side of that, it's about collecting data. We're going to be treating individuals for opioid, alternatives. We're going to be treating people for concussive injury. These are all things we have. And most of this stuff is all natural. We don't experiment with our players. That's not what we're going to do. So the goal and the objective here is for us to be able to have a solid full season, but safety is most important. We're not going to rush out there and do anything. We don't have to. We can take our time because, again, it's more than just playing football. It's about the development of the individuals that are, whether they want to be a GM, whether they want to be a front office personnel. That's what this training is for. That's why the NFL is calling you to ask you about what we are doing, because they see it is beyond the field. It is beyond the game. And so that's what I think that once this story is told, and I think in this rebirth that we're experiencing, that's exactly what's going to happen. Is this story is going to get told. There's going to be some young men who we've seen on the videos who are inspired. I applaud, the players who have seized the stage to finally nail down, here is the narrative, here is the message that we missed out on telling the story. But this time we're not going to allow the message to be caught up in the flag, because it was never about the flag.
Okay, I'm not doing these no more, Jimmy. The young man say, did you see how many African players was taken in that first round?
It is
That's
what
shocking.
I'm saying to you is just the beginning. And again, the point of it is like I said, the NFL, both of us, has afforded us some privileges that where we came up from, we would not be able to do what we've done. You grew up in D.C., on the streets in D.C., tough town. You still a tough guy down there. I grew up, I grew up on Mercy Drive. That's the place that Chris Johnson got shot about 5 years ago. So I've grown up, we've all grown up in those environments, but just because you grew up in those environments doesn't mean that you can't take the opportunity to move forward. You have moved forward, stayed the course, invested your life, just like I've invested my life and everything we've had in the things that we are doing because we believed in what we were doing. And now the opportunity in this rebirth of the country. And again, I don't think there's going to be any more developmental leagues popping up in here. And so it's, so advantage to us, because here's one of the other things I love about the strategy. Again, we have, we're going to have in this new world league that we've established here, if you would, players from the United States going over to Africa to train, teach, be player coaches, because that's the best way we're going to be able to do that. We bring players over here to the United States, so think about it. We got 16 teams, you got 55 African nations. So obviously everybody's not going to have a team, but that doesn't mean everybody can't participate, because what they'll be able to do is the other countries there, we're going to take the brightest and the best, and we're going to cultivate grassroots too. But there's a 26-year-old pole vaulter, from Sierra Leone, who's 6'3", runs at 26 years old. He's still running a 4.4. Now, he's not the fastest in the world, but he's still running that kind of speed. I know that we can get Steve Atwater, somebody out there like to teach that kid how to come run down that alley. We can get in Earl Thomas or somebody else to train these young men. And the beauty of it to me is we got a fresh mind. See, you're an old tired head now, and you hard-headed, Richard. You're a hard-headed joker. But you get a fresh mind that's got that's got the athletic ability, and they have the will. Everybody wants to play in the NFL, if there's just something about the National Football League.
Mm-hmm. But the realization of it is, it's just not enough room.
That's right.
And they have to understand that. And just like the other minor league system, this is, as people tell me, way overdue. Also, Jamie, we do have somebody want to hear a little more about the National Baptist. What's going on with that?
So it's real simple. And again, applaud, like I said, Dr. Forbes, who's the Chief Strategy Officer for the National Baptist Convention. He when this whole COVID thing started, he sent a letter to Governor Governor Hogan, and also many congressmen, because he's a strategist. And as I said, he served 3 presidents and 4 governors.
Right.
So he's wired in as a strategist. And he continued to ask the question, okay, so first of all, we already know historically, and he was the first one to say it, is that my biggest fear is that if this thing goes crazy, which that's everything they're saying, the African-American community is going to be impacted at an exponentially higher rate. What does that mean? Well, African-Americans right now comprise 13.4% of the U.S. population. But when you look at, and now we're at approximately 1,000 deaths a day or some number like that, over 50% of those individuals who are dying are African-American. And so what he has talked to them about is we've got to do something. So Bishop Charles McNeil, who is the executive director of and runs the National Capital Baptist Convention, he and Dr. Forbes, and like I said, I applaud him for saying enough is enough. And he said, I'm in, because we have to do something. And truthfully, at this point, it's unfortunate, but we can't blame the government now when we know we're going to have to do it ourselves. And I go back to, again, Magic's pledged $100 million. The NFL just pledged $250 million. Congress, if I can't see, and I cannot see a scenario where with this last, because this will be the 4th trillion that gets dropped into the hopper. And to date, of the $3 trillion that has been spent, there has not been one substantive program nationally. As Dr. Forbes says, when you're in the emergency room, the person that's closest to death goes to the front of the line. That's how it is everywhere else. And at this point, when you're dying at 4 times the rate of your of the people you have in the country, we are dying at a rate that we must go to the front of the line. And I applaud the National Baptist Convention for having the vision and the forethought and they've had enough to where this is the first foray in getting change happening. And what we're going to be doing very simply is this. So number one, we're going to be doing assessment, and that would be mental health assessment. All of this being through telemed. And then we're also going to be providing testing. And in this particular testing scenario, we've got the science now. We don't have to go anywhere. They've asked for social distancing, and social distancing makes sense, and social distancing works. And so our strategy is that, they say go home. We're going to send the nurses into the home. So therefore, the point being is that what we want to do is also channel, because one of the things that really we have to be careful about, because this has happened time and time again, is you have a movement, you have a situation. Million Man March, as an example. What happened next? Big march. What was the activism that took place? What was lasting? There's nothing that lasted from the Million Man March. We have to make sure that this motivated, and again, this motivated nation of white and black people, 80% of the people are saying this stuff is wrong now. Okay, we're 13.3%, 13.4%. Let's make sure this math is right. When you look at in Nebraska, in Iowa, all these people where people are protesting, these aren't all black. It is majority of white people who are protesting because, again, Scott has sent me a post that he put on LinkedIn, and the point of it is that now I see. It was some people didn't see, and then the people that don't see, they don't want to see. But that number is significantly smaller than where we are now, because as mad as people want to be, look who's out there. There are Asian Americans, there are African Americans, there are people all over the world. As what is her name from Houston, the congresswoman. She said it perfectly about the young man who was murdered, Mr. Floyd. He was brought here just as Martin Luther King was brought here to die. And I know that's a strong statement, but that's the reality, because in his death, because if he lived, they'd be mad and he survived. In his death, eyes were opened, and it took this singular moment, and this history will remember that his death signaled the opening of white, black, and the world, because we cannot restrict what is happening and his death to the United States of America, because I can show you all over the world where people are saying no person should die or be anything happening because of the color of their skin.
Well, Jamie, as you put it so straightforward, but what did the NFL, did they chip in terms of earmarking funds for?
Well, we haven't gotten that far. We just made the announcement today of what we're doing. And so they put $250 million out there. And so, as they say, and again, we're going to check the whole card now.
Okay.
Because again, when you look at what we're doing, just go out there, read the press release. When you look at what we're doing, if you see something better, holler at us or go support that. But if you don't, we are expecting anybody who's looking at putting funds and resources towards a viable plan, we're expecting that donation to go to the National Baptist Convention. That's what we are expecting. And if that is not the case, we want to know, okay, well, what are you doing with these dollars? I don't want to see another flyer. I don't want to see another educational. What we need is tangible action. And it starts with, because we have this over-indexing of people dying, and part of it has to do with, African Americans not being tested because of the Tuskegee experiment.
Yeah.
That whole thing has got everybody messes. No, I'm not sticking nothing in my nose. What do you want me to prick my finger for? What?
That's right. I'm definitely not doing it.
But what we want to do is have these young people, white, black, purple, or green, be a part of validating the process. We want them to be a part of going into the clinics or going into homes and knocking on doors and saying, hey, look, we're here. If you're feeling fine, that's fine. But if you feel you want to get tested, we're here, and we'd like to help walk you through that whole process. And they be there to help them navigate. And they can go in there with the Black Lives Matter T-shirts and all that stuff so that people know. The bottom line is we've got to affect change, and all of this talking, it doesn't have to stop. I went too far there. But what I'm saying is there must be action.
Absolutely.
Got a lot of talking, and reform is required. There's no question. I love what's happening with, how can somebody have 18 situations, if you would, as a police officer, and just because they only got convicted twice or whatever they're doing, but at the same time, we have pedophiles or other people, and they're on a sex offenders list. And so, yes, you're on a police offenders list. Let's put them on the police offenders list. But the point of it is that reform has to happen. And I like it. Well, not everyone else. I agree. We don't need to defund anything. What we need to do is better appropriate the dollars, and reform is required. to where,
Absolutely.
no, you can't be a bully and you can't be a bruiser and all that other kind of stuff and be a cop. No, you can go be a bouncer somewhere, fine.
Yeah.
But
And-
you can't be a police officer representing a city, municipality, county, or whatever with that kind of conduct. It is unacceptable, and thank God we're not taking it anymore.
Right. How can we? Won't you tell the listener audience how to get in contact with the national
So
chapter?
it's real simple. So all you got to do is log on to the web or download the. Let me rephrase that. Go to www.nbcimin.com. No hyphens, no nothing. It's nbcimin.com. Make a donation. Tell your friends. Tell corporations. This is here. And again, our whole supposition is this: look, if you got something better, do that. But if you don't, we need these resources to go into these communities and, and again, urban and rural, and affect change.
Right. Well, Jamie, I appreciate you coming on. I realize how busy you are, and I know how hard you work, and Mr. Forbes, but I want to thank you for coming on today, and I look forward to talking with you later because, we have to get things going. But
Yes,
you've been listening to another edition of Inside the MFL. I'm your host, Richard Myles Sr., along with we had Mr. Jamie Dukes on and Mr. Melvin Forbes, our Chief Strategy Officer. I want to thank y'all for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you.